Morning, good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you, Eve. Thank you for all you do for WPI. And sorry, I'm sitting in for John Harris today. He is taking a well-deserved PTO day, apparently. So we're excited today to introduce Adomni, and they're one of the leading programmatic platforms. They connect agencies and brands with on-the-go consumers across all sorts of digital screens, and he'll sort of talk about how they're positioning Adomni as just another digital screen. And he'll also talk about all the ways that you can target and work with their attribution tool, all sorts of great reporting tool. They have about 500,000 screens across the globe, which serves over 60 billion impressions monthly. So pretty fast growing programmatic out-of-home platform, one of the leading ones. And let me introduce Christian Kull, and he is going to really be the ringleader for Adomni today. And he has a wealth of experience. He runs their strategic partnerships with brands and agencies, both independent and holding companies as well. And he's got a ton of experience. And I think what's best about his experience is he comes from both agency, client, as well as publisher side. So he's, sort of sees through the lens of what all of us face on a day-to-day basis. Most recently from Datalogics and Oracle, who bought them. But now he's with Adomni. So we are excited to have him. He's going to go through his presentation, introduce Adomni, talk a lot about programmatic out of home, and then would love to hear from you guys and hear some questions, hear any other things that you're facing, whether it's out of home challenges or anything in the media space. And if you don't speak up, then I've got some questions and I might call on a few people that I know. All right, Christian, welcome.
Thank you for that, Fletcher. Appreciate it. And I'm going to just share my screen right off the bat. So just bear with me one moment. All right, let's do this. Get into presentation mode. All right, everybody can see the screen, yes? All right. So thank you all for taking the time. And like Fletcher said, depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And we're hopefully make this a nice interactive session. Please ask questions along the way. You don't have to wait to the end. I appreciate the interruptions so I don't get tired of hearing myself talk throughout this. But the focus of today is going to be around how programmatic digital out of home could actually relieve the stress of planning to showcase, because we're going to showcase exactly how easy it is. And also how it could mirror that of digital media. And that's the whole goal around Adomni as a platform, is buying digital out of home in the same way that you're buying digital media. And also, while we're driving measurable outcomes. So we're going to talk in great detail about that. And as Fletcher said, I'm Christian Kull, and I am the SVP of Sales here at Adomni. I started last December. And before we get into the agenda, I just want to call your attention to the QR codes that you're going to see on the top right hand of every screen. And if at any point you're interested in learning more about the content that I'm talking about, you can scan that QR code and it'll direct you to the area on our site where you can take a deeper dive. And for what you're going to see now, if you were to scan that QR code, it would just take you to my LinkedIn profile if you wanted to contact me for any reason. So just bear in mind that that QR code is totally interactive and it's going to change based on the content we're talking about at any given time. So today's feature, we're going to talk about Adomni briefly, just so that you have a baseline knowledge of who we are and what we do. And then we're also going to talk about, why digital out of home matters, right? I think there could be preconceived notions around the health of out of home audiences, and we have data to showcase that out of home audiences are not only back, they're thriving. And also, by the way, out of home works, right? And we're going to show you specific instances where certain brands are driving towards multiple KPIs, and we're going to give you an example of each. And if you don't know or not too familiar about programmatic out of home, we're going to show you 5 different things that you may not know and how it can mirror that of digital media, making it super easy to buy digital out of home programmatically. And the Adomni way is to showcase how much that we strive to be partners with brands and their respective agencies. You know, we really do not like to be considered a vendor. Right. And so from a collaborative standpoint, we're, you know, super collaborators with an incredible white glove customer service mentality. And then, as you've mentioned, and I mentioned a little earlier, no need to wait to the end to ask questions, throw them in the chat, and Eve will cut us off and bring those questions to light. So if you feel like you want to ask them, don't be shy. And if you have any questions, shoot them into the chat, but if you don't, I would go on mute. All right, so let's just dive into about Adomni. All right, so we are a programmatic digital out-of-home platform, and I think that the easiest way to think about who Adomni is we're a screen aggregator. And what we do is essentially partner with all of the major media owners around the globe. And they allow us to have access to their inventory so that brands and agencies can access all of the available inventory in one platform on Adomni. And it's all of the usual suspects that you would imagine, right? And we just have a snapshot here on the left of some of the key partners that we work with, but Lamar, Clear Channel, Outfront, they're all providing us access to our inventory. And to date, we actually have 465,000 screens that are available throughout the world, right? And that number is only growing. So there's one missing link that we've had here because we have over 205 different partnerships with various media owners around the globe. And the one missing link was JC.co. And the good news is we just inked a partnership with them and we're in the middle of integrating their inventory into the Adomni platform. And so that number is going to substantially increase. And I'm talking about that now in great detail simply because there's a tremendous amount of representation outside of the States on this call. And JC.co has a huge footprint outside of the States, which is really going to ramp up our number. But even with that said, even without JC.co, right now, that 465,000 screens is spanning across 20 different countries. And so we already have a significant international presence, and it's only going to get stronger. And like Fletcher said in the beginning, that we do have 60 billion impressions each and every single month. And again, that number is going to grow. And so one call out too, before I transition to the next slide, is that you'll see one of our partners here is Uber, right? And even though we're aggregating the screens across, you know, multiple publishers, we do have our own exclusive inventory, and Uber happens to be that case, one of those cases. It's the most prominent exclusive inventory that we have. So we, Adomni, went into a partnership with Uber where we're powering the digital screens that are on top of their vehicles. And even though we're relatively new and in our infancy stage with this Uber partnership, we're already the largest car top network in the US with screens in New York City, LA, Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, and we just got greenlit to go into San Francisco and Miami. And by the end of the year, we're shooting to have 10 to 12 total markets. And next year we will go global, probably with exposures in North America and potentially Europe. And the intention here is that Uber OO, as we call it, will not only be the largest network, car top network around the globe, it will be the largest out-of-home provider around the globe because we intend to have digital screens wherever Uber runs their business. Okay, so that's a little bit about Adomni. And now let's talk about why digital out-of-home matters. And I alluded a little bit to this when I was going through the agenda, is that, you know, perhaps marketers might think that out-of-home is not necessarily the place you need to be right now because we're amidst a pandemic, but I'm here to show you data to prove otherwise, right? And so Apple mobility data is something that we reference on a regular basis to understand consumer behavior. And what you're looking at here is a total USA glimpse of how consumers are behaving as it relates to walking, driving, or taking mass transit. And if you refer to this little divot here where we see a dip, that's when the pandemic first hit. And so as you can see, walking and driving has completely escalated beyond pre-pandemic stages. And what's crazy is mass transit is starting to increase as well. And that's a recent development. As you can see here, in August time period, it was just hitting the baseline. And now we're just coming up into the positive, and we're plus 19. And so with walking and driving, it is completely escalated to where you can capture the attention of these consumers that are out and about. Maybe it's taking a different dynamic than it was before the pandemic, because all walking, driving, and transit was relatively on par, and now walking and driving is just completely blown up, and now transit is back in action. And so this data helps us understand that the out-of-home audiences are there, and we just need to figure out a better way to capture their attention, knowing that they're doing things differently than before the pandemic happened. They're driving their own vehicles, they're walking more, and now they're just starting to feel comfortable getting back to mass transit. So the takeaway here, out-of-home audiences are not just back, they're back in full force and thriving. And if you're interested in we could share this link out afterwards. It's a really cool link. You could look at it by country to understand what the dynamic is where in your backyard, but also by each individual market in the States. So let's talk about performance. And so we're gonna take you through several case studies here as it relates to activity that we've seen in the marketplace that where we've seen success. And so the first example is Nestle. Nestle has a licensing deal with Starbucks to basically represent their brands for any of the products that are sold outside of Starbucks brick and mortar retailers.
Christian, sorry, can I interrupt?
Eve, yes, please.
We do have a question around the mobility trend from Benedict. He's wondering if these are global figures or US.
This is a total US view right now. And so we can include the link for you to plug in any market around the world or even any specific market in the US. But this is a total US view. Cool. And so as it relates to Starbucks and Nespresso, the initiative was to announce this new pod that was catered for Nespresso machines. They wanted to drive foot traffic into the 100 top target locations. And so what we did was we identified these target locations and identified screens that were 1 mile away from each of those locations and complemented it with Uber Ooh, as you can see here. That's an example of Uber and of course the digital billboards. And the result was a 42% increase in foot traffic to each of those target locations compared to that of control group. And so, and think about as, you know, another preconceived notion around digital out of home could be that maybe digital out of home only caters towards brand awareness, not necessarily down to the, you know, closer down to the bottom of the purchase funnel KPIs. And I'm here to show you exactly with this report that that's not necessarily the case. You have a 42% lift in store traffic, which showcases that digital out of home isn't just brand awareness, but it's driving for lower funnel KPIs as well. Okay. Oopsie. Looks like we have another one in the chat here, Eve.
That was just Tony sharing some information to Benedict. You're good.
Okay, got it. Cool. And so as we think about another case, now we're looking at actual revenue increase. And one of our clients was Superdraft, and they ran a really short campaign in multiple markets around the US. I believe it was actually 20 markets in key NFL teams, if you will, to support the key NFL teams. And it was for fantasy football. And in a span of less than 3 days, they generated $740,000 in incremental lift. And the cool thing about this campaign is that it was planned and executed in less than 5 hours. And it's, you know, that's really worth honing in on a discussion because, you know, you turn on a campaign in minutes. It's that streamlined, it's that turnkey. And the substantial campaign here that drove massive revenue in less than 3 days was live in less than 5 hours from start to finish. And then finally, Thorne Vitamins, they're a direct-to-consumer company, and they're really focused on trying to break through the digital clutter. And so they wanted to embrace digital out of home to make a splash in key markets, primarily in New York and LA. And so they were focused on, like, did this really have a positive impact on my brand? Are people really thinking about, buying vitamins through our site? And so after doing a brand awareness lift, it showed that not only did it increase brand awareness and brand equity, it also increased and had a lift in purchase intent. And so these are really key findings for us, because it's showcasing that digital out of home is not just solving those brand awareness needs, it's it's moving the needle and driving towards those KPIs that you're focused on. All right, so now let's talk about those 5 things that you may not know about programmatic digital out of home to make planning super easy for your digital out of home activations. And the first thing is geography, right? And being able to narrow in on this massive scale, right? And so we're just looking at the States, a little bit of Canada here. And it looks like a T-Mobile or Verizon map showcasing coverage, right? But I'm sure you can guess at this point that each of those red dots represents one of the screens that is within our network. And we all know it's not necessarily practical to say, I want to run national on every screen that you have, because it would require substantial budgets. So the first thing to think about trimming this down or refining the campaign is by selecting various markets that are important to you. And you could do it by country. You could do it, if we're just thinking about the States, since we're looking at it here, you could look at, each state. You could look at it by zip code. You could look at it by DMA or CBSA, which is pretty much the same thing as DMA. It's just the digital or the out-of-home designation of the DMA. They're so similar, it's not even worth talking about them separately. And then finally, you can do what we talked about as it relates to the Target and Starbucks/Nestle example, where you can pinpoint specific points of interest, whether they're retail locations or whatever they are, and you could plug those addresses into our system and set a radius that makes sense for you, whether it's 1 mile, 2 mile, a half of a mile around each of those points of interest, so that we're only going to be selecting screens around those areas that you're focused on. And so like a retailer like Target might just want to target screens around their area, or they might want to have a conquesting campaign to just target those individuals that are by a Walmart location. So there's a lot of different ways to think about how you can use that point of interest radius targeting. And there's a lot of ways to refine your buy in a very simple manner to make sure you're only picking the markets around the globe that are key for your client's business. And it's not just a matter of trimming down the geography, it's also a matter of identifying venues and screens that make sense for your client. And what I love about digital out of home is that it's come such a long way as it relates to the versatility of the screens, right? And so for me, you always have those cliche screens that you would associate with digital out of home, right? It would be digital billboards and urban panels and transit shelters, train stations, bus stops, right? But now it goes well above and beyond that to incorporate place-based screens. So point of purchase screens. Marketers can now be inside grocery stores. Marketers can be inside convenience stores or liquor stores, inside shopping malls where they could easily go to a point of purchase and conduct a transaction. There's a lot of different opportunity for you to cater a buy by only including the venues that make sense for that particular piece of business. And so I'll give you an example, right? So CPG, right? So we're talking a lot about Nestle. Let's just say that Nestle wanted to run a campaign and is separate than driving traffic into Target. You could have those brand awareness screens like, digital billboards and Uber, but then you could also reinforce the message by having those screens inside the likes of, a grocery store, or convenience store, or gas station TV to reinforce the brand awareness message and to encourage a transaction among those consumers that are seeing their messaging inside the point of purchase. And even in another example, think about a financial services account like a Bank of America or a JP Morgan Chase. You know, they can now advertise at points of purchase inside convenience store and say, wouldn't you rather earn points with this credit card? So it's a game changer. So it's allowing for you to cater your message on each of these venue and screen types based on what's relevant for that particular screen and what's relevant for your client. So geography, you could trim down any which way you want, and the venue/screen type, you could trim down any which way that you want that makes sense for your client. And then also there's a way to incorporate target audience into the mix. And so we have a partnership with PlaceIQ. If you're not familiar, since there's a lot of international representation, PlaceIQ is really prominent in North America. They are a location services provider, and they allow us to incorporate segmentation into the mix. There's over 800 different audiences that are available in our platform. And you can include any one of these segments into the mix that makes sense for your client. And what will happen is we'll prioritize those screens that over-index against the segments of choice. And it does not impact the CPM whatsoever. So by you adding in the segments of choice, its CPM stays as is. So no premium for incorporating this into the mix. And then it's super easy. Like we talked about the example of Superdraft where they were up and at 'em, like planning a huge campaign in less than 5 hours. So you could plan a campaign, you could share this campaign with your clients and your colleagues and simply launch. And what we're gonna do is actually show you, rather than going into the platform because we have a limited amount of time, I'm gonna actually show you a 1-minute pre-recorded video of the platform so you can get an idea of exactly how easy it is by selecting a market and selecting venues and selecting a target audience. So let me just pull up a different screen and I'll walk you through what we're about to see. All right, so simply you log in, plug in your email, your password, and you're in business. You hit new campaign, you plug in who the client is, and you set up a campaign name. And you'll see this key metric tray at the time of creating this video is 460,000 screens. And then we'll go to the left here and say, let's pick Los Angeles as the market. And you'll see immediate change in this metric tray. Now there's 12,400 screens, and let's pick a venue type, digital billboards. And again, you're gonna see now there's one venue type and 157 screens in LA. And let's pick a flight. We'll do 9/1 to 9/30. There's about $10,000 budget that we're working with. And now let's incorporate a target audience. We're gonna do gym goers, adults 25 to 34, and let's look where these screens are located in LA. And all the orange dots represents the screens, the digital billboards, and you can see there's an actual photo of the board, the address, and the cost associated with it. You could save this and go to launch, or you could share it with your clients and your colleagues. It's really that simple. And so that is an example of the platform. I will say that since that was a minute view, super fast, if anyone ever wants to have a sidebar on going deep into a demo on how it really operates and the functionality around the demo deeper than what we just saw, I'm happy to do that. You know, you can just ping me and hit me up on LinkedIn or go through Eve and Fletcher and we'll make sure you're taken care of. And so now let's talk a little bit about, okay, your campaign is running and what can we do to really magnify those exposed IDs, right? And so one thing is mobile retargeting. So those IDs that were exposed to your digital out-of-home campaign can now be treated as an audience. And we'll collect those maids for you in conjunction with our measurement partner, Mira. And we'll pass those maids as though they're an audience back through LiveRamp and then to your DSP of choice so that you could run media against that audience in all other digital channels. And so I love this, right? Because as digital out of home is becoming more and more embraced from a digital media perspective, this is a great way to bridge the digital out of home to what you're doing from a digital media perspective. It makes it for a true omnichannel activation. using the exposed mades from digital out of home in all other digital channels. And so from an Adomni standpoint, we do not charge to pass those IDs back. It's just another functionality that we can, functionality that we offer to enhance your overall digital media. All right. And then finally, attribution, right? And so as we're talking about Mira, let's dive into a little bit about measurement, right? And we talked a little bit about, yes, it works, and we showed several case studies. But what we have, and we have a partnership with Mira where we're offering added value campaigns, added value attribution campaigns, as long as the campaign reaches 10 million impressions. And that's a feasibility threshold set forth and placed by Mira. And the reason why it's that number of impressions is because Mira feels that that would be the volume that's adequate enough for your best chances to achieve statistical significant results. And so the 3 KPIs that we're solving for here is, one is foot traffic visitation. You know, did that exposure equate to incremental foot traffic into my brick and mortar stores or whatever it is? It doesn't just have to be a retailer. Could be a hospital, could be anything. Another piece is website visitation and conversion lift. Did that exposure translate into increased incremental visits to my website, or is there something more complicated that we would like to solve for? Another online success event, whether it's signing up for the newsletter or conducting a transaction. You know, we can measure both of those. And then the third piece is any KPI that's associated within an app. It could be downloading the app, taking an action in the app, or even conducting a transaction within the app. We're able to measure that as well. One thing that you're not seeing up here is that, and what we did with Thorn is the brand awareness program, report. The reason it's just not up here is it's just not offered through Mira, and we rely on a different measurement partner. So these are the reports that we provide, again, as added value to bring accountability to the market. And I love this piece because, you know, we are in fact like putting our money where our mouth is and working closely with you and working closely with your clients to move the needle and making sure that we're setting up an activation that works for all. And so, and the Adomni way, right? And, you know, like I said earlier, you know, we think ourselves as super collaborators, we partners, not vendors. We would really prefer for everyone to think of Adomni as an extension to their team, right? And it's not necessary that you have to go in and learn the platform and be an expert in it. We'll help you with that. Like, we'll help you set up the plans. We'll collaborate with you on refining the plans, and we'll execute the plans on your behalf. And there's no charge for managed service. So we'll gladly do this with you, and we'll strategize with you and figure out the best activation plan for your client. But if your agency prefers to be hands-on keys and do it yourself, then we'll make sure that we set up the appropriate training for you so that you are acclimated with the platform and that you're using it to its full maximum potential and leaving no stone left unturned. So really it's up to you, whether it's your preferences self-serve, your preferences managed service. We can help you either way. It's really up to you. And that's about it. So if you have any questions, you know, feel free to shoot them into the chat or just come off mute and ask them. This link or this QR code will go to my LinkedIn page if you wanted to hit me on the side. But that is the conclusion of what I had prepared for you all today.
I do see a question here from Mike. If and when will you have representation in South Africa? JCDecaux is one of the largest out-of-home vendors in our market.
Yeah. When we so we're looking at a completed integration with JCDecaux in October, maybe November. So very, very soon should we have that representation in South Africa.
I'll start with a couple of questions, and then I know I'm gonna pick on like Anto and Allie because I know you guys are talkers. But I mean, first of all, thank you. I think for us media folks and those that are on the account side too, that are on that have to dig into media a lot of times. I mean, certainly we've seen the reports for CTV, socials on the growth trend, but also really, I think out of home and really fueled by digital out of home is the kind of other channel that's growing, which is pretty awesome. So I think today's topic's relevant. I know all of us are sort of facing staffing challenges, right? Probably across the board. I mean, you guys probably are too, but from an agency perspective, between clients pausing and the pandemic and, now agencies hiring, working remotely and paying, higher salaries, et cetera, there's a pinch. So I think, can you just talk a little bit more about sort of, how people can work with Adomni, both from, a self-service perspective as well as managed service? And I kind of look at it, as a strategist or as a planner at heart, a lot of times we like to go in and sort of like play with the tools and, what inventory is available? How many impressions can I deliver? Like, what are the formats that I want to use by market? Because each market's sort of different. So, I think people probably want to blend a little bit of both. So just kind of talk a little bit about, you mentioned that, the service that you guys have, but I feel like that's a really nice balance that you could either do everything for you, or you could let people get in the tool and play with it themselves and then sort of moderately help. So expand a little bit on that.
You got it. And so, something that's becoming more and more commonplace for those that desire self-service is just like you said, Fletcher. They go in, they play around with the tool, and they start by creating a plan. And then they ask us, hey, can you look at this plan and kind of make sure that we didn't leave any stone unturned, or would you provide any other recommendations? And we'd go into their account, check out the plan, and either hop on the phone with them and say, this is what you ought to consider by refining the buy. Maybe there's too many venues on there. Maybe they need to cut down the markets based on the spend. And we'll just guide them in the right direction on revising it before they start sharing it with their client. That's one piece. So of an example of those that have a desire to be on keys, but don't want to completely own it themselves. When you're talking about managed service, how we would typically operate is that agencies or the brands would send us information on what they want to do. Like, here's a campaign, here's our budget, this is the markets we're interested in, give us as many campaign details as possible, the goals and the objectives, so that we could start putting pen to paper and create a plan in the system so that brands have something to react to. And then from a managed service, we would then share the plan and want to collaborate with them on, okay, based on what you know about your client, what can we refine here to make this suitable for them? And so it's like generating that plan, but then collaborating together to refine it before it's shared out. And so, and again, either way works. And eventually what we're thinking is that from a self-serve perspective, once the agencies are completely schooled with the program and feel comfortable and they don't want to rely on Adomni any longer, they don't have to. We're here when you need us, kind of thing.
Just kind of following that note on, that we're all sort of in a pinch. And I think the other big thing that a lot of us face is that we're on like 10 different platforms, right? We have our reporting tool, we have our Google suite, we have our DSP, we have, partners like Adomni, et cetera. So a lot of the out-of-home partners, kind of like Adomni, like Vistar, are starting to integrate with the DSPs. And I know you guys have integration with Zeta, and there's sort of, more of that in the mix. I guess talk a little bit about your plan to sort of be able to have inventory available across DSPs, but also just, the benefit of using a platform like Adomni, even as an individual tool.
For sure, yeah. So as it relates to Adomni as an SSP and making sure our inventory is available in all the different DSP partners, it's something that is a priority of ours. And like you said, we have one integration right now is Zeta Global. That's been happening, or that relationship has been carrying on for over a year now. And as it relates to the other DSPs, probably the more notable ones like DV360 and the Trade Desk, Amazon, MediaMath, you name it, we are solving that problem or that issue by partnering with a company called BidSwitch, which is a super SSP that essentially acts as the pipes between Adomni and any major DSP. Literally over 100 DSPs will have an integration with Adomni. We have already signed a contract with them. We've paid them already, and the integration work is underway. And it's gonna take several months to complete, especially in collaboration with the various DSPs to complete this indirect integration, if you will. And so I would anticipate Q1 that's finalized, where Adomni inventory is going to be integrated within all the major DSPs. And then separately, what we're also doing is working directly with key DSPs, and the most notable is the Trade Desk. And we know a lot of folks over there, and though they have integrations already with other SSP partners, they're really keen on Adomni because, one, of the scale that we have, and also two, the unique inventory sources that we have primarily around Uber. And so even though we're working on the indirect integrations, and I say indirect because BidSwitch is basically in between us and all the DSPs, but with direct integrations, like going directly to the Trade Desk, is still going to be our priority. And so that is a work in progress. And until that happens, when you can book the media directly through your preferred DSP, you can test the waters in Adomni's DSP for the short term to kind of test to test the waters in digital out of home. And that is the reason why we're not charging for managed service, because the last thing that many agencies need is having to learn another platform, right? And so we want to take that burden off your shoulders so that you don't have to worry about how to use it. We'll do it for you if you would be keen to test it. And then once we're integrated, then you could start using our inventory in your preferred channels.
Awesome. Does anyone else have a question? I've got a few more too, but.
And actually, Fletcher, you said something earlier too, like, how CTV and, the cool thing, I just don't mean to kind of derail here, but the one thing that kind of really draws, is a draw for me as it relates to digital out of home is I find it so similar to how CTV was considered, several years ago when they first launched into the market, right? And if you can remember, nobody really knew what bucket to put CTV in, right? Is it a TV buy? Is it a digital buy? And it was a little bit of a land in flux. And now fast forward to today, CTV is 100% a digital buy, and linear TV is in its own, island, and it's not going anywhere, perhaps cut budgets because more money is now going to digital and of course CTV. But I consider digital out of home to be in the same exact situation that CTV was several years ago, where you're kind of a little bit in flux. Is it an out of home placement? Is it a digital placement? But now that it is available in all various DSPs and kind of mirroring the pattern of being bought in the same manner that digital media is being bought, I can confidently say that digital out of home is going to be part of a digital media buy for sure. And traditional out of home is not going anywhere. No, yeah. I don't think so. Same as linear TV.
I think that the important piece that you mentioned there is that when it is encapsulated within the DSP, in sort of that environment where you can follow, users from upper, lower funnel, and all the retargeting stuff that you talked about, like that's a great point to make, that digital out of home sort of is just another digital channel. Okay, raise your hands if you have questions. I'm going to keep going. But you talked a little bit about the attribution, and Benedict called out the great tool that you brought forward, the Apple tool, which is a helpful tool that a lot of us have been using just to sort of see where traffic, foot traffic and drive traffic is increasing. And I like the transit addition as well there. I guess just talk a little bit more about just some of the other tools. I mean, expand on the Mirror partnership, but also just like, the reporting that you guys do, I know that you guys can also handle creative resizing, just sort of some of those other added benefits.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just going to give a shout out to Tony, who just raised his hand, because he's the one who shared the link for Apple Mobility with everyone. And before I get into those answers, Tony, did you want to say anything or ask anything?
Oh yeah, how's it going, Christian? Nice to meet you. Myself and my colleague, I don't know where she is on the screen, Ali, but we're based in Belfast here in Ireland, and it's just that see, digital out of home is starting to become, I would say, the new normal. More and more screens are kind of popping up around the place, but we would definitely be looking more to UK and Ireland, especially Europe as well when planning. So we're just wondering, would you have something in terms of like site lists and like availability in terms of UK and Ireland, and then on top of that Europe? Because at the moment it would probably be about a 70, I would even say 80-20 split in terms of traditional out of home versus digital, especially here.
Yeah, 100%. And so one thing that I have today is a full international map that lays out the number of devices by country. So in UK, in Ireland, in Germany, in Australia, throughout the world. And I could share that, but I'm hesitant to do so because it's just going to substantially increase now that JCDecaux is integrated with us. And so I would ask for you to bear with me until this integration is complete, so that you have a true, accurate representation of our international footprint. I'll tell you just to give you a little anecdote, because I know this after recently looking at it, but today, without JCDecaux, we have about 4,500 screens in the UK alone, digital screens.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's substantial. And it's going to be on the rise. Ireland, there is coverage, but certainly not near the extent of the UK.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thanks for letting me know.
You got it.
Christian, as part of giving access to the tool, I mean, anyone can go in and basically pinpoint a geography. I mean, it's pretty easy to identify formats or geos or different things, like sort of getting what Tony was asking at.
Yeah, definitely. And so I could send a link to the group for where you can actually go in and create an account and start playing around. And again, I would actually prefer to show you what I have today rather than you go play around the system, but don't take the international numbers for what they are. They're incredibly understated right now. But yes, I can certainly show you how to do that and get you all set up with the link so you can start playing around in the system. Indeed.
Awesome.
And then Fletcher, going back to your question about attribution and how we work with Mira, and it is worth talking about because there's an incredible amount of rigor that goes into these analyses, right? And if anybody is familiar with data and analytics, it's this is what you would consider causal measurement, right? The opposite would be more directional. And so the reason why this is causal is because you're actually looking at two populations, one that was exposed to the campaign versus another one that wasn't. But it's not just picking a random audience that wasn't exposed. The rigor behind the analysis is making sure that the control group, those that weren't exposed, are identical to those that were, based on many different variables we have insight into, to ensure that the only difference between those two populations is one was exposed to the digital out-of-home ad and the other one wasn't. And so when you're looking at performance, you're actually looking at incremental. How many incremental store visits over the control group was a result of this campaign? Same thing with online conversions. How many incremental conversions? And what you'll find is that a lot of simple, less rigorous measurements might just associate a multi-touch attribution to it, where was there exposure and was there a store visit, and not necessarily comparing it to an equal population. So it's causal measurement, and you could kind of take it to the bank, and it comes with a level statistical significance to show the confidence level around the results of the reporting. And Mira, who is our preferred partner, is also the one that's helping us cultivate those exposures that could be collected and then sent over to your preferred DSP partner for mobile retargeting. And then, oh yeah, and the other piece Fletcher, that you touched on, pardon me, was around like the other bells and whistles, the things to make life easy for making this more of a turnkey and streamlined type of approach to digital out of home. And I will say this is that, you know, creative, if you don't know, about the services that we can produce, you might look at the number of different creative assets that are required for a campaign as mind-numbing, right? And literally, you could have dozens of different sizes that are required to launch a campaign. And so our rebuttal to that, or our solve for that, is to actually take a lion's share of that legwork off your plate. And all we would require is 4 or 5 different screens, depending on what you're activating, and we will resize the rest. And so just keep that as if you share with any creative agencies that they have to produce 30 to 40 different assets, they're going to break out into some sort of allergic reaction, and we're here to prevent that from happening.
Brittany is twitching over there, but now excited, I'm sure. Actually, I was going to share Joan on my team is on, and he's working on a current campaign. And I know that to that point, I think across the 10 markets or so, there was like 19 formats, and we had only priced out, sizing out 10. So you guys are helping with the others, which is
Perfect.
Really helpful. I was going to ask one more question, kind of following up on Tony's piece, not necessarily the same question, but just as you guys, you know, or as you see the footprint of WPI, and if you aren't working with a partner in a market that, you know, is a digital home provider, like it sounds like you guys are out there constantly sort of trying to add new inventory and whatnot. But I mean, I know similarly, same campaign that Joan's working on, there was a partner in DC that wasn't a part of Adomni, but then you guys went and helped work that out. So whether you added them into your system or just helped do a direct deal, just can you talk a little bit about, I mean, it sounds like that's kind of another little bells and whistle added white glove service.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I mean, it absolutely can. I mean, one of our major initiatives is scale, right? It's always to ramp up scale. I mean, look at what just happened, you know, moments ago with JCDecaux. That's a newfound partnership, and so, you know, one of our initiatives is always increasing scale, the quality scale. And so if there's a request that from a client and their agency that we need to have a certain out-of-home partner incorporated into our system, of course, we're going to try to make that happen, because there's no reason not to. And we can either, you know, help with making sure that whatever private marketplace deals, PMP deals that you have in place can be carried over into our DSP, or we could just try to integrate them as fast as possible in time for the launch of your campaign. And so with that said, if any of you have any introductions to make for any media owners that are not currently part of the Adomni network, we'll gladly speak to them.
All right.
Oh, and another thing, Fletcher.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. One thing I was going to say, maybe even just to go into a little bit about the functionality, because I think this is really important too, is that like when if you think about like maximizing the ad plays in a digital out-of-home arena, you know, you really want to make sure that you're not like going to be running on a billboard in the middle of the day or overnight, right? You want to make sure that like your investment is properly thought, properly allocated in a way that each ad play is going to have a monumental impact, right? And so with that said, you can day part by each venue type, right? And so let's just say hypothetically you're running, you know, with digital billboards, and you're running, you know, inside convenience stores, right? And you could say that, all right, I want day parting for digital billboards to be in the morning and the evening rush, and have 2 day parting rules for them. And then separately, an entirely different day parting rule for that of your convenience stores. Maybe that's, 9 in the morning through 9 at night, because it's more practical for it to be all day in a C-store. And so at any rate, it's just something to think about from a functionality perspective, that you can really cater the times that your ads display when it makes sense for that particular venue. And I just saw in the chat, Jennifer Perkins at Adomni has been fantastic in customizing these plans for US nonprofit clients. Metro Transit, perfect. Yeah, Jennifer Perkins is great. She's on our strategy team, our strategy/planning team. And she is definitely, her and the team are responsible for putting together plans, as a starting point before we start collaborating and refining these particular plans. But yeah, she is great for sure.
Yeah, just echoing what Fletcher had said about, you guys being willing to go out and find this other inventory that isn't in the system and help us with that. It's really great.
Excellent. I'll have to pass along that feedback to her, Joan.
All right. I know there's some other talkers and smart people in here. Any other questions specific to programmatic out of home? Since we have a few of the key media folks around the network, anybody have any other pain points that you want to bring up or talk about that you're facing or have questions about, Adomni related or not?
I'll ask something. I don't want to disappoint Fletcher because he said I'm a talker. So yeah, digital out of home is growing significantly in Canada, but our biggest issue when it comes to a lot of the small, essentially any market outside of Toronto and Montreal, is the availability. A lot of the boards will sell out direct. So when it comes to any type of programmatic out of home, there's just not enough inventory to get any type of quality placement. So I'm just wondering, in Canada specifically, if you guys are growing your network. There's a couple of providers that are Canadian specific here that are massive. I'm just wondering what kind of reach you have with the likes of Pattison, for example. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I could tell you, I mean, off top of my head, we have about 10,000 screens, I believe, in Canada, if memory serves me correctly. So there is a significant footprint. It does spread across the entire country. So I would just encourage you, maybe hit me up on the side and I could kind of do a little evaluation for you to see what kind of screens we have. And we could also do a little look and see what kind of availability those screens are under to understand if we would run ourselves into a jam. But we could look into that 100% for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
So with that, thank you all. Really appreciate your time. Nice to see so many faces. We will, if you have any follow-up questions, by the way, for Christian or for Fletcher, please send them along to me and I'll pass them along.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks,
you.
Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Christian.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Fletcher. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye.